Welcome everyone to the NXP EdgeVerse Techcast, where you will learn about NXP software, tools, and enablement that supports NXP processors and microcontrollers. This is your host, Kyle Dando, and I'm here with my favorite co-host.
Oh, you're my favorite co-host too, Kyle. This is Bridgette Stone. Welcome everyone. And we're excited today to dive into the world of Visual Studio Code and how NXP is making it even more powerful for developers. To explore this, we are joined by Cristian Tepus, a software architect at NXP.
Bridgette, our listeners are really going to enjoy hearing from Cristian. Over the years at NXP, when I need to understand a complex topic about our development tools, Cristian is usually that one person I can count on to break it down in terms that I can understand. So Cristian, thanks for joining the TechCast. Can you share a little bit about yourself to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Cristian. I'm located in Romania. I'm working on Bucharest NXP site. My role is software architect on IDE technologies for MCUXpresso. I have almost 20 years of experience in Freescale and in NXP on IDE software tools for DSPs and networking, and for the last 8 years on MCUs within MCUXpresso ecosystem, enabling software development and debugging tools for NXP MCU devices, which are based on ARM Cortex-M cores.
Cristian, can you confirm or deny that you've worked on, let's say, Code Warrior, Kinetis Design Studio, LPCXpresso IDE, and now MCUXpresso IDE? I bring this up because our listeners and customers, they live this stuff. They've used these tools for years. So having you as a guest is terrific. And I think that your experience with these tools shows that you have a never-ending goal to deliver that ultimate tool to our customers and deliver that perfect experience for the customers.
Yes, Kyle, I have spent lots of time on those tools. The main focus of these IDE tools has been to provide to user a full development solution, starting from getting a software repository, creating and managing projects, creating target application, deploying it on a hardware platform using our debug prop solutions, or using partners like Segar or PND Micro, plus a rich set of analysis and debugging utilities.
So Cristian, Kyle just rattled off a list of IDE tools that NXP has provided over the years. But today we're here to talk about what's new, the latest advancement in NXP tool support. That, of course, is the MCUXpresso extension for Visual Studio Code. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is Visual Studio Code and why has it become such a popular choice for developers?
Visual Studio Code, frequently shortened as VS Code, is a free, lightweight, and powerful source code editor developed by Microsoft. Even though it's defined as a code editor and is powerful on its own, it is accompanied by VS Code Marketplace, which is actually an online store for a huge number of extensions. The extensions are produced either by Microsoft or other vendors or even enthusiasts developing plugins for extending its default features or adding new ones for compiling, debugging, data visualization, data manipulation, basically gaining in this way the ability to be transformed in an integrated development environment.
That's a solid rundown. It's funny when you say lightweight. I feel like that could be a bit misleading because with the right extensions, it could be a full-blown IDE. Would you say most embedded developers are using it as just an editor?
In fact, lightweight is an attribute used to describe the primary purpose of the VS Code design. Just a code editor with some essential features like syntax highlighting and code completion plus some basic debug support built in. So the answer to your question, I would say, is yes. You can use it as just an editor. I've seen many people using it like this. Still, for embedded developers, the intention is not to be used just for editing code, but to have it as a solid base for your customization needs. And actually, this is the strongest argument in favor of VS Code. You can set it up as an IDE fitting best your needs. Not unnecessary features carried in classical IDEs. No slowdown due to processes that might never use. After 1 year dealing with VS Code for our customers, I would say that it is most suitable for solution for nowadays software development kits.
Thanks, Cristian. That is a great explanation of what VS Code provides to developers. But now I want to focus in on where NXP has introduced an extension available in VS Code. And I believe that the large community of people contributing an extension is one of the major strengths of VS Code. So, focusing on NXP's contribution, how has the NXP MCUXpresso extension enabled VS Code so that customers can develop with their own devices?
Okay, so at the middle of last year, we launched MCUXpresso for VS Code, which is our own provided extension. It integrates native VS Code support and some public extension with NXP specific customization and tools. This extension makes possible a full integration and development for NXP software repositories with NXP hardware platforms. MCUXpresso for VS Code aims to offer a seamless development flow, retrieving an NXP repository, managing a project, offering SDK examples as starting point. From here, a user can build a target application with various customization and optimization, and then deploy the image on the device. Then you can start what most of development application requirement, debugging, analyzing, and optimizing.
Oh, what a huge amount of work you and the team have put in to provide what I have found to be one of the best extensions that enables that embedded development you just described. And just for that, our listeners should follow the links in the episode. You guys can download or install the extension to evaluate it yourself. Or the easiest way I've found is if you go to Google and put in MCUXpresso extension or MCUXpresso VS Code, then you will find a direct link to get started. However, before they do that, Cristian, let's talk about the other VS Code features that improve that embedded software development process that the team's done.
VS Code platform comes with a lot of native support for helping users in modern embedded software development processes. I will mention some relevant ones. First, the support for Git and GitHub, providing an easier integration with customer repositories. And here, keep in mind that all NXP MCU-based software repositories are provided using GitHub, MCUXpresso SDK, Zephyr, and Matter. Also, integration with terminal utility is useful for setting up various environments or allowing users that are preferring command line style of working. This is something that I often hear from our customers. VS Code allows to customize its environment. Either it's about the editor layout and settings or about the way the extensions are set. And this through its so-called profiles functionality. This provides the option of having multiple profiles for different needs or even sharing a profile with some other users. An important infrastructure support, different extension addressing embedded developer needs. One example is C++ extension, offering syntax highlight and IntelliSense for code completion and navigation. Another one, flexibility of build systems, allows VS Code the ability to integrate with CMake, which is basically the foundation for NXP MCU software repositories. Also, part of the development process, interoperability with GDB servers stands as primary support for debugger capabilities. This is either about NXP proprietary software debug probe called Link Server, or it is about the partners like Segar and P&D Micro.
Thanks, Cristian. We have an understanding that VS Code has a ton of built-in features that make it great for embedded development. You touched on things like Git integration, debugging support, and build flexibility. But beyond those features, why do you think VS Code has gained so much traction, especially in the embedded space? What is it about this platform that makes it stand out?
VS Code became very popular due to highly flexibility to configure and execution speed, and finally, a large library of extensions. It is generally considered as being much more modern and having a more user-friendly interface. Also, more and more competitors and embedded software developers are contributing to the VS Code extension library. And I would mention another important aspect, complexity. Today's NXP-based software repositories, and here I'm referring to MCUXpresso SDK, Matter, and Zephyr, are requiring very complex development environment. A lot of collateral tools, complex build system, and complex device architecture. Also, as previously mentioned, Git becoming the facto distribution channel for software kits, and this being native in VS Code. On top, CI/CD, enabled with Git and GitHub, makes it very popular. VS Code also provides a powerful remote development extension pack with support for secure shell, containers, Windows subsystem for Linux, and dev tunnels. This simplifies the development when using shared resources, this involving both code and hardware devices. Another nice feature for collaborative work is Visual Studio Live Share, facilitating developers real-time editing and debugging, and can use the same session with a secure connection. This is beneficial for testing environments, CI/CD, and remote teams. And finally, mentioning IntelliSense, a very powerful code completion tool, and even more, Copilot, being the AI integrated solution to provide the next level in the coding and support.
Thanks, Christian. That's great. As a user of VS Code, I have seen the power of all of those features. And again, I encourage our listeners to give it a shot. It loads very quickly, and then you get these benefits right away. But Christian, NXP has been well known for our support tools. So not only our IDE, but the supporting tools around that. Can you talk about how does MCUXpresso development tools work within the new VS Code extension? And how has NXP made it easier for developers to get started with these tools?
Indeed, MCUXpresso ecosystem contains a suite of software tools needed for various setups and scenarios. Beside the IDE itself, this also includes configuration tools, secure provisioning tools, GUI guider, FreeMaster, and link server. One big step in the delivery model compared with our old IDEs and also addressing complex ecosystem dependencies is the integration with MCUXpresso installer. MCUXpresso installer is a new application in our ecosystem intended to provide all necessary tools and software dependencies for MCUXpresso SDK, Zephyr, or Matter. Our VS Code extension actually interacts with MCUXpresso installer, offering the ability to hide a complex environment. And this is done under a simple option like automatically install everything. Part of this installation is the suite of tools from MCUXpresso ecosystem, either if the user chooses to install all or having a custom setup. The other part is the extensive set of tools for the infrastructure you need. And here I'm referring to Git, Python, compiler, Ninja, CMake, toolchains, and many more. Also, software debug probes is part of the installation. Additionally, the extension adds a layer of integration of these tools, and I'll give you a few examples. Ability to operate on project configuration or source code, and this is done using MCUXpresso configuration tool, or device tree compiler and kconfig in Zephyr context, or managing container image for complex application, like in the case of RT1180 or i.mx95, devices which are using secure provisioning tool. And finally, interacting with link server, standalone tool for debugging our NXP debug probes.
Okay, so once the user has taken advantage of this MCUXpresso installer that you just described, they should be ready to go to use the tools that you mentioned in detail. But how easy is it for them to use these tools within a project? Has NXP made it easier for the developer to launch the config tool or maybe change a kconfig value? How has NXP made that maybe easier and more intuitive for the customer?
Our extension has project menus that launch the NXP config tools so developer can quickly access, for instance, pin settings or review and change clock settings. In the case of kconfig, NXP has integrated a popular kconfig GUI menu option. It helps present to the user all of the configuration values available to customize a project in their workspace.
That's fantastic. It sounds like the team is really focused on making these tools as accessible and intuitive as possible so developers can spend less time navigating menus and more time building great applications. Now, on to our last question, and let's make it personal. You've worked on so many aspects of this extension. What's one feature that you feel especially proud of? And for a little behind the scenes insight, was there a particularly tricky problem your team had to solve along the way? Something that now that it's fixed makes a huge difference for developers?
In the first version of VS Code extension we provided last year, we made an experiment which proven to be a successful one and is now part of our product. This consisted in porting an existing Eclipse IDE feature into VS Code, studying several aspects: difficulty to port, the performance difference between Eclipse and VS Code, and the design capabilities of VS Code. For people not being aware, Eclipse IDE was the technology we used in our previous version of IDEs. And this is about image info, an utility used to statically analyze a build artifact. That means analyzing the memory, sections, symbols, footprint of the application plus static function call graph, providing code depth, code recursion, static stack consumption, top memory consumption. And this proven to be a reliable feature inside VS Code, as is a very intensive computational utility. It works pretty well under its TypeScript implementation. Keep in mind that Eclipse IDE has Java. While we integrated with FreeRTOS, this feature gained on VS Code additional improvement, the ability to display file-based hierarchical memory footprint, similar on what Zephyr does through waste memory report option. The advantage of having or working with this feature is that the user can analyze any type of build artifact, an object, a library, an executable, providing in this way general or detailed overview of the application content. This helps the user to determine highest device consumption offenders, so on the end, helping the user to determine where to operate in order to optimize the application.
Wait a second. You're saying this tool actually helps developers become better surgeons when it comes to optimizing their code? That's pretty incredible. Can you break that down for us? What kinds of issues can it help identify and fix during the quote unquote operation?
Yes, on a big application, iteratively adding code, day by day, long periods of time, performance issues typically accumulate. Not a single function call or not a single stack usage always counts. But when these accumulate in complex execution trees, they tend to cause big performance trouble. And here, image info helps showing tree of calls or stack usages that contribute most to the memory footprint degradation. A simple click on a node from this tree will open the code where these weaknesses are located. I would finally say, in such cases, cut before crack might be a good encouragement.
Wow, what a great deep dive into the world of Visual Studio Code you gave us, Cristian. And it really does show how NXP is making it even more powerful for our embedded developers.
Absolutely. Today, we explored how VS Code has become a go-to platform for developers thanks to its flexibility, extensive extension library, and built-in tools for modern software development.
And of course, we learned all about the MCUXpresso extension for VS Code and how it brings NXP's software ecosystem into the mix. It makes it much easier to develop, debug, and optimize application for NXP microcontrollers.
We also talked about the MCUXpresso installer, which simplifies setting up the development environment, and how tools like image info are helping developers make smarter optimizations.
So Cristian, you gave us a great behind-the-scenes look at how these tools were built and why they matter to people. So thanks again for taking that time.
Thank you, Cristian.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity today.
And if you're as excited as we are, be sure to check out the links in the episode description to download the MCUXpresso extension for VS Code and try it out for yourself.
That's it for this episode of the NXP EdgeVerse Techcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time in the EdgeVerse.